Right, so good morning, everyone. My name's Anthony Kesterton from Red Hat. I'm a solution architect with Barclays, and this is Simon Cashmore. So Carol Wright is actually sitting up the front here, but we decided to change the order of the presentation a bit, so Simon's going to do most of it. I thought I could start by explaining very briefly a situation that many of you have probably been in before. So sit back, relax for a second, and think about the last time you ordered some hardware. So if you're a developer and you want to go and get hold of some kit, you normally have to fill in a form and send that off. And if you're lucky, you get a response saying, yes, we've logged your ticket. And in a while, you might get a response. In the meantime, and some of this is true, by the way, it's happening in banks right now. In the meantime, what often happens is you'll go and try something else. You'll want to perhaps use your own laptop to get started on something and then discover that it's all locked down so you can't really use it. And so then what you could do is, I don't know if you know, but when they finish making films, if they're doing a lot of, say, digital work, they will often sell off that kit in a lot. And you can pick it up on eBay really cheaply. And if you go onto eBay and look for HP 6th-gen servers, in the UK you can get them for about 150 quid, which is, what's that, about $200 in American? And so you can go and buy this stuff, and it's really cheap. And what's even quite fun is you go on and look, and the kind of kit you can get for that money is very good. So what you do is you go and hit the buy button. The next thing you know, a large box arrives at home with this kit on it. At this point, you discover that blade servers or servers and data centers, especially the rack-mounted ones, are actually quite big. And it's not so the width of them, it's the depth of them. They're about 70 centimeters to a meter deep. And you get this shipped home, and it arrives, and you realize it's quite big. And especially when you take all the packaging, you think, there's probably a lot of polystyrene here, and so on. But of course, there isn't. That's actually the size of the machine. And then if you're really silly, what you do is you go into your wife's office, who was at work that day, so she wasn't around, and you place it on her desk, just because it was near all the network points, and try it out. And you boot it up, and it's really good. There's SASTIS and everything. And it sounds like a jet engine taking off when you start it up. Like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get away with this? So when your wife gets home, she takes one look at this thing and says, that's not staying there. Okay, fair enough. No, it was just temporarily. It's going to my office, but my office is filled with all sorts of other stuff that you're doing at the time, so there's not really space for it. Fortunately, when I walked out into the hall where I'd left all the packaging, I noticed that we have a small cupboard under the stairs, and if you looked at it, the box just about fitted on the side. And you think, oh, what we could do is maybe it can go under the cupboard. So you open the cupboard and find all your other stuff, so you take that out, put it in. And then you think, 19-inch racks. This is great. I'm getting some really good kit here. And you go onto eBay again, and you look up 19-inch racks, and they're normally 40U high. And that's definitely not going to fit into my cupboard under the stairs. My cupboard under the stairs looks a bit like the Harry Potter one. Yeah? So you've got this big rack, and you're probably going to have to buy an angle grinder or something to cut it down. And then by pure chance, you go onto the internet, and you discover IKEA lack coffee tables. Okay? Now, is there anyone Swedish here who can speak Swedish? Okay, how do you pronounce L-A-C-K, lack? Okay, yeah, what they said, all right? And you get these coffee tables, and we just happen to have a spare one in the garage from a previous experiment, and the distance between the legs on lack coffee tables is exactly 19 inches. It's brilliant. So after you've gone and bought a power drill, you then get some wooden runners, put them underneath the table, and the 19-inch rack kit slides in beautifully. It's really good. And so what you do is you take all the rubbish out of the cupboard under the stairs, you take the table, you have to take the legs off again because it doesn't quite fit, get it inside, put them on, and you can slide your 19-inch rack. And there's a power point under the cupboard, which is great, so you've got power for it. This is brilliant. And then you start thinking about networking. And it's got to be wired networking. Fortunately, you happen to have a drill, one of these nice sort of large drills, which is just the size of some networking cable. So you go and clear a space under your wife's desk in her office, which is next to the cupboard under the stairs. You get this big drill out and you drill through 3 layers of brick. We have brick houses in the UK. 3 layers of brick, and you can feed through a network cabinet plugs in. Now you've got your server. Then the fun begins, because you can power it up, you're on the network, you get hold of Fedora and install that. That was really easy. I was very impressed. Then you put some virtual machines with RHEL on, plug it into Subscription Manager, and so on and so on. And you've got a system, and then you think, what was I doing again? At this point, bing, the email comes through. You can have your virtual machine now on the proper infrastructure. You've only got it for a month. It's very depressing as far as I'm concerned. So there must be a better way. And what I really like about what the folks at Barclays have done is how they've turned situations like that frustrate developers terribly into something really useful. So with that, I'd like you to give a little round of applause and a bit of cheer and joy to wake yourselves all up and get a bit of laughter going. And I'd like to hand over to Simon Cashmore. Thank you.
Well, I'm not sure I was expecting that. So Anthony's clearly a comedy turn. I'm going to be a bit drier than that, so apologies. You've got to put up with me. And thankfully we got the slides working, because I thought you're just going to have to look at my face and not distract yourselves with some material over there, which would have been bad, wouldn't it, really? So, as Anthony said, I head up middleware product management, middleware engineering, really, so I look after the technical implementation. I work very closely with Carol, who's the service manager for our platform. Banking. I'm not going to go into details about Barclays, but really just to frame the presentation, it's a very regulated environment that we work in, very risk averse. Security concerns are primary, very process driven. So I think the example, Anthony, is how we traditionally work. It's very, very, very tough to do anything. And I'm going to focus this presentation around the sort of cultural and process challenges and how we overcame them to introduce a platform that was enabling DevOps and giving real self-service capability to our users. So a big step change for us. So in terms of Paas, we've branded what we call our application hosting platform as a service as Paas. And traditionally, when we've presented these sort of things, the tech has been forefront and we've presented around the solution. But really, we view it more now as a service that we offer out. So the things around the edges that make it a real hosting platform that we offer as a service, rather than just a bit of tech we've built under a cupboard somewhere, and then we're all pleased with it because it was really, really tricky to do and quite challenging, but nobody can use the bloody thing. So we really are focused on that service offering. Primarily focused initially around JE hosting, Java-based hosting, and that's why we call it application hosting platform as a service. It's broadening out a little bit now. Platform's based on OpenShift container platform, and the rest of the presentation I'm going to go through those areas that we've highlighted around the edge there, the accountability, support model, collaboration and charging. And then we'll talk about some key challenges and some real benefits to the platform at the end as well. So, our journey. And for me, actually, the journey started before 2014. Prior to that, we did a major change at Barclays to introduce JBoss across the whole of the Barclays offerings. So it's split into towers in Barclays between investment banking, retail banking, Barclays cards. So to offer something across the whole of Barclays that's a standard offering. So we worked hard on a JBoss offering, and I think that was some of the groundwork for us to move into this platform was in that offering that we did. We built utilities, as we called them, farm offerings. So we tried to start on that multi-tenancy journey, but it was fairly immature. We also, prior to that, did a bit of a proof of concept with a hardware-based solution from another vendor. And again, it was an opportunity to use that as a stalking horse to really introduce the concept of multi-tenancy and at scale and enterprise worth. Thankfully, we decided not to go with that and ran an RFI. So the slide really starts at the end of the RFI when we considered different options, different solutions, and chose OpenShift. And we set up a project to run this. We do run the engineering in a very agile manner, so we use Scrum, and I'll talk a bit about the tensions of that later. And I think through that first year, and then we went soft launch at the end of the year, end of 2014, and then we went formal launch Q1 2015 with our service based on V2 of OpenShift. And as you can see from the timeline there, production followed soon after in March, and then by the middle of the year, we had around over 100 registered services, more than 1,000 applications deployed, so already pretty successful, and predominantly on the test environments initially. We also introduced what we call e-channels, which is our DMZ-based offering during that year as well, so an internet-facing offering. For me, during that year, two big wins for us that I knew we'd done something that was important and going to be successful in the Barclays world. A team from Portugal went live on the infrastructure 2 weeks after we released production. None of us knew this team were using the environment at all, so it was a real success measure for us that a team had just done that without us being involved. That's a big change, especially in the retail space, that people were able to do that themselves. Another big win for us was our first digital app. So that meant it gave credence to the environment that we'd stood something up that was digital and mobile facing in a new environment very quickly. Traditionally, those took a long time to stand up at all in our DMZ sort of environment. So real success factors. We launched our solution based on V3 in May 2016. And I did write down some stats. So Barclays Legal are very fussy about what we can and can't share on slides, but they let me talk a little bit more. So I can tell you on version 2 platform, which is still running in parallel to V3, we currently have 5,000 gears on that environment. Since December of last year on our V2 platform, we've seen a 1,000% increase in production services on that environment. So still massive growth even on our V2 platform. On V3, in a relatively short space of time, we've already seen 800 pods running on that environment, about 160 in production. Overall, across everything, about 162 services running on that environment in what for Barclays is a very short time span really in terms of offering out that capability. 98% of our greenfield applications are now going on the platform in that JE hosting space, and especially in the retail world. Future beyond that, we're moving into the US, so we've been predominantly UK based. We're moving on to AWS as a first public cloud offering. In fact, it's on there, we've already gone there, we're extending that into production. And we're also going to do IFE, internet facing on public cloud and private cloud for V3 as well. So those are our futures soon around the door. So first thing I'd talk about is accountability. So we really went for a service focus, and for me this is the whole end-to-end surface, the full stack. So traditionally when people have engaged with middleware, they've engaged a middleware person, a specialist in a particular middleware component, JBoss for instance, they've built that, and you've engaged with a Unix team, a load balancer team, and you've had to engage separately. So we offer the whole service from a single point, a single platform. So a real service focus. And for me also, from my perspective, the engineering work we did was also more service focused. So we didn't just concentrate on the technical solution, we also looked at the impact we would have on the service offering. So an example is architecturally, we designed it so that we could do patching from the off, which is a big problem for us in our world, patching. Traditionally, we've built something and thought we'll worry about patching later. We very much architected it so we could do that from the off. So it was a change in the way we thought a lot about the way we did the engineering. And we also take a very service-focused view. So our number one worry is stability of the platform. We live or die by the trust people have in the platform. So we have to build that trust by making it available all the time. So we change our scrums to do things that are going to help with service stability first, even if we're impacting some nice new product enhancements that we're working on. Introducing self-service across Barclays. So there's as I mentioned briefly, it's spread across different divisions. There's a different level of capability around self-service already. So the investment bank have traditionally done more self-service. Retail traditionally don't. So there's a difference about how people could cope with self-service. But a real game changer for us to be able to provide that for the retail space where traditionally they just had to rely on infrastructure people to do everything for them. Roles and responsibilities. So in terms of introducing the service offering, we looked at what we do for the business traditionally around incident management, going on calls when incidents come, and the change that would mean with this new platform about where the business users would need to take more ownership and take on responsibility for some of those concerns, and it would move away from the infrastructure team. So with great power and self-service, there is also responsibility around maintaining that. So often people want the nice, quick developer access and do things quickly, but they then want somebody else to look after the running service. So there's a big change in roles and responsibilities that we had to look at and work with our users to understand that. So we articulated what those roles and responsibilities were. And sort of following on from that, we had terms and conditions for using the platform. In terms of if you use the platform, we expect you to deploy it so that we can be highly available across 2 paired data centers. We're going to shut down a data center and we're going to patch it, so you need to be active. So there's certain terms and conditions of using the platform you must adhere to. Some minimum characteristics about cloud native, how cloud native you are. So you must be horizontal scalable, for instance, but we try and mix and match that so we're accessible to lots of traditional banking apps, as well as really maintaining that new cloud native type application as well. And we've really enhanced the platform now to bring your own image on the V3. So traditionally on the V2 we would provide our own cartridges that you consume that we've done and built for you. On V3 we're really allowing you to bring your own image and use it on the platform. So a real capability which again impacts those roles and responsibilities. Who has to take it through governance? Who needs to make sure security have signed it off? If you're bringing your own image, it now moves to you as a user. So a big cultural change for Barclays, that. Moving on, I don't know how I'm doing for time. Okay, I wanted to leave a bit of time for questions, so I'll try and speed up a little bit. In terms of a support model, we created a new run the bank team so that we decided if we tried to run this from our existing teams in the existing way we did, we'd fail. We had to set up a team that understood those boundaries, about those changes in roles and responsibilities. So it was a dedicated team from the off, and that's been a very big win for us in supporting this environment. And that team also looked for improvement continually, automation chances, and help feed the engineering work we do. The team's in 3 key locations, so it's in India, UK, and also Lithuania. And it's a relatively small team, so those numbers of applications would traditionally be many, many people within middleware supporting that. This is a very small team supporting the middleware offering now. It is a multi-skilled team that are looking after this, so we don't just want a JBoss specialist. You've got to be able to understand OpenShift, understand Java a little bit, and it becomes really multi-skilled. A lot of the Linux, SE Linux, C groups, so across that whole stack, real win and real need that we identified. We also identified new dedicated roles, and this I think was a first from us moving from those utility offerings I've briefly mentioned to how do we really run as a service. So we had dedicated roles for release management to notify users when we were going to do something, new product enhancements when patching was happening, a capacity manager to manage capacity for us in a proactive way rather than we've run out, we've better buy some more tin. Really a dedicated role, commercial management around, I'll talk about charging a little bit in a second, around really making sure we've got a proposition that we can maintain, we've got the funds in to do that. We also moved to consultancy and pre-sales type roles. So this was new. This was a more proactive approach to talking about the platform, going out and working people before they were using it to help them understand the platform, the opportunities. So both my team, myself, I'd still do a lot of that type of work and activity. And it's a change in role for particularly my engineering team, from being just heads down creating stuff to being out there and working with people and really doing that pre-sales consultancy type role across both the run the bank team and engineering. We created extensive documentation, so we wanted this to be easy to use. You didn't need to engage with us if you didn't want to. Portugal was a fantastic example of this, that they just didn't, we just really didn't know. And it was all around the documentation that we'd created for them to be able to do that. We went for a 24/7, 365 support model, but the big change here, we went for test as well as dev. So development environments and tests is really, really important for the dev parts of DevOps, and to some extent more important than production a little bit. So it was a big change for us, that cultural change to, we've built a non-production environment, so we separated non-production and production, but we're going to maintain that exactly as though it's production, so it's always available. And the other feedback we got from users, they didn't want to engage in the usual way to get access to the run the bank team and raise problems on the platform. So the usual ticketing systems we tried to avoid, and we introduced BChat channels, easy access to email. We introduced a front man capability, we call it. So this is somebody dedicated in the team in India or the UK. So it's start of day India to end of day UK time. There is somebody monitoring those BChat channels in a dedicated way to at least answer and get the right people to help out. So a real change in the way we did incident management and took calls from customers. Collaboration, well, it was mentioned quite a bit this morning, and I was quite pleased we got a slide called collaboration on the basis of that. Really key for me is this change in culture and having to collaborate. So as well as the technical change, it's really a change in the way we all work together and collaborate to really make this happen, this solution. We've for me, we run Scrum in the engineering in an agile Scrum way, but we've also learned and improved on the way we've done the service offering and how we've launched it and what we've done. So we learned from our previous incarnations of utilities, we learned from our V2 launch, and we changed it for our V3. So, for example, from the V2 launch, when we first went live, the run the bank guys were inundated with too many questions they couldn't cope with, and we'd not done that documentation well enough, and we'd not been out and done the pre-sales, we'd not done all of that bit, so we were suddenly swamped, and we couldn't cope. That's when we set up that front man capability, so we responded to those challenges we were seeing. CD integration, so we went live on V2, and then people asked us how to plug in with Nolio or Jenkins. We hadn't thought about it before. Well, we had, but we thought we'll do that when we've gone live. With V3, that was a primary concern, to make sure we knew how we would integrate with all the things that the bank was using outside of our environment for those pipelines, and really making it easy for developers to use and end users. We also launched originally in the UK for V2, and we switched to launch in India first. So we did all the big presentations. Myself and one of my colleagues who sit in the front went out, and we helped with presentations with the India team. And really that was a decision based on the massive developer community that were in India. So we were close to a lot of our end users, and also they really liked the platform and were keen to use it, and really wanted to know about the new platform. So we actively changed to where we launched based on our experience first time round. And I think another change, we tried to focus to get key evangelists across the organisation to sell the platform, not just us selling it. So one of our biggest is from the app team, who's sitting at the front, developer. He now sells the environment probably more than we do. We get him to go and do sessions for us, and it's a big change for us in the way we offer our infrastructure. Not on there, but we also use pilot environments. So we went soft launch, and we invited users to come on the environment early to get feedback, to change it. So again, very collaborative, and changed the way that we try and solution traditionally and build a perfect platform. Now it was, we'll put something in quick, we'll get users in, we'll understand what you want from the platform, and we'll adapt it as if we can. We did extensive marketing, TV, intranet, big posters, really did a lot more around the place about making people aware of the platform. In the India launch, we also did constructed training sessions, to 2-day labs that we ran fairly quick. We ran the first ones during the launch week in India, where developers could come and be trained for 2 days on the platform to understand it. We do drop-ins, so we also do booth-type drop-ins where you can rock up and get help onboarding, using the system, whatever, so informal, just access to it. And these are, somehow they seem obvious when I talk about them now, but they were such a big change for us culturally to do this type of thing when we're offering out a platform and a service offering. We did hackathons, so the Jenkins integration for V3, somebody from my team, somebody from the Run the Bank team went off with Steve, the developer, off-site to somewhere else in Manchester, and did some work on trying to work on that Jenkins pipeline, so how you'd use it and how you consume the platform in that. So we called it a hackathon, maybe not our use of that word there, but it was a sort of dedicating outside of our normal environment to go and do that sort of work. We co-locate with customers, so we go and work off-site. We do a lot of work with Barclays in Northampton, where we've gone on-site to there for a period over a month of somebody being on-site with them every week, and joining their Scrum calls, being part of their team, and really helping the platform be successful. There is a cloud adoption working group. This is business users that are using our private cloud offerings, a sort of community. We use that environment to share information about new releases, etc., and also now the adoption of public cloud, it's also used for that, giving that information out to our user community. We have voting pages, so you can request new functions, suggest them, then vote on them, and that will influence our Scrum and what we might work on. We also do lots of stakeholder meetings, so Carol and I spend a lot of time going out speaking with clients, customers, and we have regular meetings with them. Charging. So the aim has always been for pay-as-you-go, true consumption-based charging. And we achieved that actually initially when the platform was new. But then finance models in Barclays are quite antiquated, is the best way of describing them, so challenging. And one of the toughest changes we've had is around finance, really is. We've now gone to a fixed and variable rate. The variable is project driven, and we have to give a fixed rate. And this is all driven by the finance process, not by our ability to be able to measure and do that charging. It's more by the financial processes within Barclays itself, influencing that problem there. 2018, we are now aiming again for a true OpEx model where we charge for what you use. And in line with our public cloud offerings, we're convinced we're now going to achieve that. We're working hard with finance teams to achieve that. So a big change in the way we do charging. We also saw a need to fund continual growth of the platform. So traditionally in Barclays, you submit an MTP submission to say, I want funding to build out more capacity, and it's a yearly based process. So we needed to change that world. So we had enough capacity in our private cloud by getting the funds in to continually lay down the kit as needed, rather than we need to submit an MTP submission and then get that funding in. So some challenges, I may have touched on some of these. One that's not on there that for me was that tension between waterfall project management and trying to work in an agile manner. So it's still driven at Barclays by timelines and key milestone deliveries and project plans, and it's kind of in the DNA of the bank that they've got. Senior execs need it somehow. So trying to work in an agile way is a big challenge for us. So we've learned to adapt to cope with that in a way that we've run our agile still, and we still run in an agile way, changed the dependencies, and we've convinced them to be a bit more high level about those key milestones. And we're still giving dates and key milestones, but we're working with them to give the execs what they want, but also still work in that agile manner. So big tension for us that continues, really, that. In terms of readiness for self-serve, so everybody said they wanted it quick, they wanted self-service, but then a lot of the development teams didn't know how to integrate JBoss with a database. So not everybody, so some developers were capable of doing this, and there's a big difference. And the investment bank were more used to doing this type of thing. The retail bank had relied on other people to do it on their behalf. TLS configuration, etc., all that security concerns. That's somebody else's concern. We'd have to worry about that with developers. We just bang the code out. So they wanted it, but they weren't ready for that capability, so we had to train and work with developers. And so some of those lab sessions are about how you use the platform. We automate, we provide tools, we make it easy to use. If you want to go that route, you can do that configuration yourself, or you can use utilities that we provide. But it's making people aware of those capabilities that we offer. Designers and architects couldn't cope initially. What we're going to do, we need to design some tin, we need to plan how it's all going to work together end to end. How do we work with this new self-service? You know, it's not going to work. Nobody's known. And so we had a lot of kickback and resistance from that community around this solution initially. Quite a change now, probably some of the big advocates now, some of those guys, but big change. Security, big for us as a bank. So security can't move at the pace we want to move at in terms of assessing our capabilities as we offer new images, new functions, new versions. We need to get security to do their assessments, do pen testing as they need, whatever. To do it in a cadence that met with our requirements, quite tricky. So we work closely with security. We've worked to get a dedicated security person aligned to us. We've booked in pen tests. So we do pen tests rolling rather than when they say we need one, we just assume we're going to need them and just pen test continually. So we've changed the way we do that engagement with security. Cultural change, so the cultural impact of something like this is massive. So even offering choice now rather than telling people how they had to build things. I was on a call last week still where somebody wanted me to tell them what they should do, and I'm saying, well, you can do it this way, it's your choice, do it the way that suits your organisation, how you want to run it, and they almost wanted that still to tell them how to do it. So I think that's that readiness really, and that cultural change across the whole organisation. Some teams still have dedicated people that do the provision on their behalf rather than let the developers still do it, so they can't get out of that mindset. We've got to have somebody managing environments on behalf of our developers, etc., or run the bank. So a big cultural change. Run the bank team said, right, we're doing all this new work. You give us your head count because you've done it in the past. Now we want your head count. So real challenges around culture. Multi-tenancy challenges. So when we launched V2, I spent a lot of time talking about C groups, SE Linux, and explaining that in detail to people around how this would work. Because nobody believed we could do multi-tenancy. They wanted their dedicated tin. So it's changed quite a lot with V3. Nobody's asking us that. Now everybody's interested in the service, so a big change. But it was a big challenge for us, that getting people to understand multi-tenancy, and we could do it. What else? Steep learning curve. So we worked with our application teams, and I talked about that collaboration. So we did a lot of work with the payments application, and it really wasn't ready for the platform, but we tried to adapt and offer out capabilities to suit that payments app. So we had to do lots of file transfer that didn't work well with not having fixed IP addresses. So they wanted scheduling, they wanted lots of capabilities that we hadn't offered immediately, but that application never went on the platform, and we were worried at some stage that, well, does this mean we've failed? But actually we learned so much from, we enhanced the platform dramatically by working with them, but we also got more understanding of what suited the platform, and that we couldn't meet everybody's requirements, but it was that steep learning curve about, for us and the business users, about this new world, about how you'd use it and how you have to re-architect your application, potentially. That trust to manage capacity, so people still like to own their bit of tin a lot. So we've got some significant demand coming in, so there's some big use cases, some big users who want a phenomenal amount of compute power, and so we're actually working with those guys to say, how can we do that? We want to still run a shared service, multi-tenant. We don't want you to have your dedicated tin. But we understand you've got big requirements, so we're going to work with you around that. So there is a lot of challenge around that capacity management, and there's a lot of that capacity manager role has been important for us, about building up that trust around, we're going to manage capacity for you. It's always going to be there. That was a big concern about, we can't give up our environments. Draining, so that requirement around being deployed in 2 data centers. Some application teams didn't do it initially, so when we did drain to patch, they lost their application. So learning curve, so they didn't really meet the terms and conditions. We do a bit more reporting and help on that. Again, learning point for us around saying, we notice you've not deployed your application in both locations. We think you ought to. If you don't, when we drain, you might lose it. That type of thing. So changes, again, that roles and responsibilities, who's responsible for what. We have a process around decommissioning, so we were idling on V2, and we say, if you've not used it for a couple of weeks, we'll remove it, create space. And again, people weren't doing the necessary steps to make sure that they were available, and we were doing it on their behalf initially. So we were doing a lot of that idling and decommissioning on behalf, and it was a weekly task to idle loads and loads of applications, and we've seen a big change now. We're not doing that as much. The customers are using more pipelines clearly and spinning up, spinning down environments, and really getting the hang of making the best of a cloud type environment. Finance I've touched on. So I'm just going to head over to a few of the benefits. I'm probably not going to talk about this. I'll leave a few minutes for questions, so you can read some of the real benefits for us. But I think provisioning time, so we've gone from weeks to hours and maybe minutes to provision environments, so a real win for us. 70% improvement in time to market for being able to introduce new capabilities. 80% gains in efficiency around that test environment, so in terms of the underlying tin. Because we're not laying down lots of new servers, we're getting better utilization, so improvements all round. We've had no major incidents and pretty much production service stability. I probably shouldn't be saying that, committing it to a... but real wins for us around the service offering. So we are short on time, so I will, rather than spout on about the benefits, but I'll ask any questions. Absolutely. So yeah, we're very keen on vulnerability management and what we do around that. So in terms of bring your own image, we have a separate, so you work in your own area of the repository when you bring it, and we make it available on, not even on the test environment, so in early pilot environments, so we're not making it available in those 24/7 supported environments, and that's part of the process. And we've really got a manual process around that at the moment, a lot of the time around when you want to promote it to make it available to run on those 24/7 test and production environments. There's a process to go through that includes some introspection of those images and assessing it, and then we're doing a lot of work, and it's probably true we're fairly immature at the moment around that image scanning, so we've written things to understand both what's running on there as well as in the repository. We're enhancing that. We're looking at, we're re-evaluating our choice of repository and the tools we're using for image scanning, so we're putting a lot of effort into that, and we're trying to make it more of a pipeline approach. So I think from a self-service, so back to those terms and conditions and those things, those are really important for us to say, you're now accountable. So the problem in the past has been us as middleware accountable for those vulnerabilities, and when you've not taken the right release, somehow we have to get you to move, and it doesn't work. In this world, we've changed that world to say, we'll report on it, we'll give you every tool, we'll make, so we provide base images for RHEL, for instance, so you can build on top of that. So we'll provide a new, we provide JBoss images as well, whatever. So we'll make those available. We'll tell you about them. We'll tell you when you've not upgraded, and we'll keep telling you, and we'll tell you you're accountable when audit come. And we change that responsibility for who's accountable. Yeah, so it's a big change for us. So we integrated with ServiceNow. So we integrate with ServiceNow, and we create CIs. We still create CIs as you create. We've got that ready, so you can raise incidents or whatever. So a lot of that is automated, and a big change. We work with the change teams around changing their approach to change management, etc. So we said it's an automated process, the spinning up of a container, etc. So we'll record it and we'll tell you about it, but we don't need to seek approval first. So a big change in the way we do that change management. And we put a lot of the onus on the consumers of the platform, the users. So whatever change management process and how they want to do that in terms of their release to production, it's their responsibility again. So we'll do behind the covers, we'll do a lot of that automation, and our ServiceNow link that we created a plugin and stuff for Java. We make that available to say you can use this in your pipelines and things. So it's really working with the users to work with the way they want to do it. We still use incident management, etc., on the production environment. So
people in theory can script it through ServiceNow, but if the amount of view approval process. If you know that stop, it's all available. We're trying to go to that API world where you can make those capabilities available. So however you want to construct your pipeline, if you want to put a block in to go and get approval, then you can do it. So Amazon's, I'm not sure how much I can and can't say really about what we're doing there, but I think we've made it clear we're going on to public cloud, and we'll probably use multiple public cloud providers. We're looking to offer the services. We're seeing OpenShift as one of the first things we offer on that platform. Well, we've already done it and offered our V2 platform. We wanted to wait for V3, but we've got more technical challenges around our security, about getting the V3 platform on there. So we're also looking at exposing some of the Amazon services. So there's work going on at the moment. So again, perhaps have a chat outside, because I'm not sure what I can and can't say in that journey to public cloud, other than saying we're doing it. But yeah. And the other question around the API sort of thing. So there's big programs of work. So there's lots of change at the moment about structural reform, API access, and all that sort of thing. So there's a lot of things happening that are driven by the regulators that are impacting the work we do. So I suppose that example I gave around that payments app and the work we did there, that was taking a very traditional banking app and seeing if we could squeeze it onto the platform and do that migration activity. And I think and that was a learning position for us, that it didn't work because we were trying to do that, with really forcing something that wasn't going to fit onto the platform just so the platform was successful. Now, the platform, like Steve's saying, is so successful that people want to get on it, so they're having to adapt. There's a big change. I mean, the opportunities around the API program, structural reform, mean everybody's looking at their applications anyway and thinking about re-architecting. So it's almost driven by when they're looking at changing the application, they change the way, or might change the platform they use. So we're not actually actively going and saying we're going to move all this on there, which is very back in the beginning with some of those business cases that we were making. We were trying to do and thinking about it like that, whereas we moved to we'll build a platform. We're not sure if it's going to be successful. We'll stand it up and we hope they come, and they have come. So it is a change. It's a risk approach to it, I think. Really? Yeah. Maybe still a big mainframe somewhere that lots of data. Maybe. Yeah. So I was laughing because Steve. So once we'd done our bit and that Java hosting bit, nice and slick and quick and everything, then it just moves down the pipeline, doesn't it? So if you've got to connect to the mainframe via MQ, or you're connecting, it's right. I can do this bit really quickly, but then I've got to go and get a DBA, and I've got to go and stand up that, and it's still going to take time. So we worked on automating those things outside of our platform and introducing new capabilities, again with the API mentality, so around our legacy platforms, looking at how we could provide access. So my team's moved, actually. I didn't talk about it, I thought about it last night, has moved and changed from people who are like a JBoss specialist or a specialist in a particular technology. That's what my team used to be. Now it's moving more and more towards developers and multi-skilled people. So we have to create solutions and develop solutions that enable access to MQ or whatever. So we're building those capabilities so we can do API links in, so that Steve's pipeline can call those other bits further down the pipeline to automate all of that. So as part of our onboarding process, you have to register, and it's almost like that pay-as-you-go model where you go and register for Amazon, you put credit card details in. So we get that at the outset, and then where people have got them. Not everybody with our finance models always has those, but you either have a service code or an order book, so that you put that in, and that's some of that integration with ServiceNow and a CI database we're doing automatically. So we're doing that as they spin up. So we're doing that as part of the platform, as part of the creating the environment. It's going in there, so you're getting that capability. We're doing across the organisation. We're doing different things around service discovery. So it's a big thing for us around that at the moment, wider than the sort of APAS platform, a lot on the legacy platform.